That's the real way to do OnlyFans, is just make people feel crazy and then make them stay and then make them leave their relationship and then make them need you more, right? I actually see certain stimuli from what I'm leaving behind and throw up.
Hello, I'm Andrew Hales. Welcome to another edition of Inside the Brain of Victoria Duplansky, aka Holly Treats on Instagram. She's an ex-OnlyFans girl, and it's been interesting to hear her journey transitioning from that to her new spiritual path, and just hearing about all the anecdotes she has about the spicy industry, as we called it. There's a lot of great stuff in this episode. I think you're going to love it, and thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe, and I love you. Victoria, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
You used to be doing internet stuff, OnlyFans and stuff?
So I did OnlyFans, I want to say like 2016 to 2000. Like I officially deactivated the account 2026. So solid 10 years there. And then before OnlyFans, I was actually a very well qualified marketer, and I ran a dev team of app developers and website developers that kind of brought all businesses in America online and set up everything for that. And I was just kind of supposed to stay on that trajectory, but sex took over the internet, and my job became not valuable anymore for many reasons other than just sex and stuff, advice and stuff like that. But I was like, hey, I don't know what else to do. This is my education, you know what I mean? I didn't really understand, so I just kind of like went with it. But I reached the point where I'm like, hey, I'm more qualified now at this point. But I don't judge people. I needed that money to get out of a really abusive relationship. I was being emotionally abused and financially abused, and I needed to make money kind of like in the shadows. And so I did that. I got out, but now that I'm not like now that my environment's changed, I don't feel the need to survive the same way, is kind of how I look at it. But I do have compassion for people that do feel like they have to survive that way.
On my side, there is zero judgment because it is literally our biology. Just imagine if there would be not that biology, it's very likely that nobody of us would be here, because I assume that our parents had some kind of sexual desire when they produced us. So in a way, it just shows that actually the natural thing is what is
Sex.
Very powerful. It is what it is, right? So therefore I think it is, for me, it was more like fascinating to see how OnlyFans kind of like opened up an entirely new marketplace, to be honest. And with really a higher direct benefit for the creators. If you can just like call it neutral. But I think you know better how it really was inside. But I think that was for me, where I said, this is actually amazing.
The way that I look at things like OnlyFans and online, and just any sort of online form of spicy creation and monetization, is it's kind of like the way I look at alcohol or the way I look at any drug, right? Like or even obsession with money, right? Like it's the same kind of like you said, it comes down to very basic things. It's like, what does survival and happiness represent to you? And if you are in lack, or you feel like you're in lack, you chase certain things that make you feel in abundance. And sometimes you need to for survival. Sometimes you want to like not live anymore if you really don't feel like you have access to some of those really basic things. And then it's even worse with the media, because it makes you feel like you're even more lacking. There's science to prove that also. And so I think a lot of these things are good in nature, but when it's at scale, become a balancing problem. When like there's too much abundance, right? When there's too much abundance, and there's an abundance of disease, an abundance of, degeneracy. Like like the universe consumes our species kind of in many ways. And so I think part of evolutionary growth too is figuring out how to survive as the apex species as human, right? And how do we prevent ourselves from overgrowing in ways that are bad. And so I think that that's why like the theme is balance, right? And some people need different degrees of stimuli, right? Like I don't consume the same stimuli as people who have lived a different life than me. And it is potentially traumatic for people who create content, especially when you get close with these people or provide some kind of connection, right? And a lot of girls do video calls right now, right? So you're getting it's almost, you're an improper therapist. You know what I mean? So you're potentially...
No, yeah, I mean, 100%. 100%.
Right.
I mean, you see, in a way, what you explain is kind of just like the classical path of every single substance or every single behavior that becomes kind of just like so important and so dominant that you cannot live without it. And therefore,
If you massage
you
it
know,
too
addiction
much,
addiction
too,
has
yeah,
nothing to do with substances or behaviors.
right,
And for some people, they get lost in one or the other. The,
yeah,
what I felt, just what was intriguing for me, right? So I'm kind of this guy who lives with six molecules, right? I live with dopamine for motivation. I live with testosterone in males and females for sexual desire. I live with serotonin for pride and recognition, cannabinoids for friendship, oxytocin for family and gratitude, and then opioids for pleasure, right? This is kind of just like my universe. And for me, it
right.
was intriguing how OnlyFans kind of linked the desire for personal recognition on the one side, right? Sufficient distance to create craving, right? On the person who needs the interaction and has a sexual desire.
Gets
And kind of just
reinforced,
like,
by the way, with COVID and the environment. Like, it's like
exactly,
your
yeah.
nature versus nurture. The whole environment was like, yes, you are, like this is now a need for you, right? Like a
Yeah.
real need. Yeah.
And for that, I just felt like the neuroscientist was like, hey, this is actually scientifically pretty smart and will print money, right? Obviously, because there's a
Right.
desperation on one side, and there is, I feel like, also a certain desperation for recognition on the other side. And this was a perfect match, even though it was actually not matching, right? It was not
Right.
like two desires that were matching each other, but it was like synergistic, complementary desires that could run an amazing business model, right? What I think is
Right.
amazing, but also, to be honest, I think, of course, had its toll on both sides, right? I kind of like for the consumers as well as for the creators, I assume at least.
Well, I think the other thing too is there's no rule book because it's kind of like a gray area thing. So no one's being as that's kind of why it's great that I'm retired, right? Because I can share the truth, which is that sex is influenced by socioeconomic and geopolitical stuff. And it's in commercialism, impacts sex. And part of the if you're selling sex, you need to sell sex, and you need to sell sex to the people that need the sex and want the sex and are willing to pay for the sex, right? But because not every culture is kind of in that place developmentally too. So part of being that's why sex workers are such great marketers, because they're really good at walking around like in America we have strip clubs, right? And that's like a legal place where people can be spicy in real life, and we don't call it prostitution. And it's like the guys will go, the girls are all walking around, they're competing with each other. They're also trying to identify their customer, right? Like who is right for me based on my experiences, who's at the vibration, right? So I think that that's the part that the customers don't understand, is because it's like there's financial incentive, but yes, we like you. But yes, we can also be traumatized if we're not aligned, because the
Yeah.
transaction's part of the consent. So I think that that's also what what sex workers online and all the people that kind of do anything spicy online, right, don't say is like, hey, we want stuff because of the energetic boundary that it creates, right? Like some people are married, sometimes the sex workers are married, right? Like all these things. And so people have interesting conditions that they set up around themselves, but it is part of their consent. You know what I mean? It is part of their like consent matrix, if you will.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How would the product have to be designed if you would switch seats and say, hey, for me, it would have had to be designed completely differently, right? Because I think indeed what you just explained, the male lens sitting in the matrix being, just to stay with the stereotype, like married, right? Kind of just like one time boring sex a month. I'm just making this up, but the point is like, and then of course this is this dream world that you can get, where you can lose yourself in, right?
Right.
But how would have had worked for you to say, hey, if I would have designed a product as a marketeer, right? What would have I kind of just created for myself? Would you know?
I
Were you just
honestly
saying,
see
yeah?
so much in common with BetterHelp. And I've said that to men online who've wanted video calls, or that I've like had somewhat of a person like when they start crossing over into therapy land, that's the
Yeah.
time where I'm like, hey, like I am not qualified to listen to this subject anymore. You are traumatizing me. Um you need, you know what I mean? It's like how do you say? But I do see like there's just this like synergy between being a webcam model and being a therapist on BetterHelp. And I wish that it was just more official.
So yeah, you did OnlyFans for about 10 years, you said?
Yeah, but I've done it more than just OnlyFans. I started on my free cams. I moved over to what we call premium Snapchat, which is just the ghetto version of OnlyFans on Snapchat that we were never really supposed to be doing, but they knew what we were doing and they just whatever because the users were up, right? And they had more accounts. So they just let us do it. And then they stopped letting us do it. And then we moved over to other sites or they let certain people do
So
it who
good.
were
So
who
good.
were in the companies that were getting invested in by the people at Snapchat is more how it goes down. But
Huh.
and then we moved over to OnlyFans, but there was like a crypto era of this. Like it's just like it takes many forms, right? The sex work
Yeah.
wears many titles.
So what inspired your retirement from it?
I don't like the owners of any of the companies, and I don't like the delusions that they live by. And I think that they're crazy, and I think that it's just really negative energy. And they made me not want to be on camera anymore. And that's not fair because I have a message that people need. So I finally just like, I'm better than this, and I don't see any benefit. I don't want to make the money. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to make the people that make money, and I'm tired of giving them fame and money. And they don't want to acknowledge how much I've done, so I'm gonna flex my power and go even harder on something else. So,
Hell yeah. You're just doing your own thing now?
not I'm not selling spicy content though. I'm on a different mission right now. I'm on the rewiring neuroscience, how to kind of like fix problems that we created with, or how to fix issues that I see happening. And then I'm also on the educating myself mission as well. I want to have new material. I want to be more scientific. I want to be more, I want to learn the metric system better in math and see if I even can, because I think that that's actually a root of a lot of American problems too, is that we don't use the metric system. So I have a lot of
Interesting.
things. Yeah, I have a lot of things.
I'm desperate, kind of learning Fahrenheit and Celsius. So
Yeah, no, it's
don't
true.
escape now. You have to until I have learned your system. You have to stay on it.
Okay.
But Victoria, I think what is just interesting again, looking at the science, and I'm just like throwing this at you just because I think it's just so interesting from the development perspective. Um, it seems from just listening to you have maxed out every single neurotransmitter by itself, right? So you really tried every like
I
excitement.
get
I mean,
an
literally everything,
aversion.
right?
You can
Yeah.
develop an aversion when you burn yourself out from these things. And I think between the TikTok, I think like, if I look at my brain, I've done my work training AI. So I know how you get a deeper understanding of neuroscience from training AI because you're like, oh, it is kind of a brain that
Yeah.
I'm creating in my image, right? With the data, with whatever I put in there, right? And when I do it a certain way, it does a certain thing. And so I look at my brain and addiction the same way. Very Freudian, very, very trying to untrain my own addiction ways.
It feels that because you said balance, right? So it feels that after all the peaks and troughs, right, and kind of single peaks, and that's so interesting just from our brain imaging data, right, that we did, is that balance and the two terms contentment and gratitude are actually much more powerful, even if you max out like older neurotransmitters. Is
Right.
that, I mean, do you feel right now after kind of just like exiting this crazy ride, even the time before, right? Do you feel more energetic, more balanced, or do you actually miss that what you left behind? So is it can you say that, because it's really interesting to see that
I have
balance
an
becomes something.
aversion to
Yeah.
what I'm leaving behind. I actually see certain stimuli from what I'm leaving behind and throw up. Like actually like don't want to eat, like I feel like sick from it. So and I feel that way from stimuli unfortunately in my phone that reminds me of that stimuli because that's part of what happens. So it's really just like the entire compartment of that stuff makes me want to throw up. So that's an interesting psychosomatic reaction. But I think just after long-term exposure to certain realities, you just kind of like, okay, I'm like, this subject isn't what my it's poison to my brain, you know what I mean? So I respect people that need it, but it's much like I feel that way. You feel that way if you have a big night out and drink too much and get alcohol poisoning. Your brain naturally puts everything that's in that compartment and makes you feel sick when you think about it, because it's like, hey, we know we don't do well with this, so survival, let's have an aversion to this. Yeah.
Is there something that you have in kind of from your memory perspective, something that was really positive from all that times? I'm pretty sure, right? It's not only negative, or is it?
I'm so grateful that I've survived and I have amazing character development as a human, and I'm very set up for life and I've refined and elevated to what I am, but no. It's a very like that survival tactic is beneath me, and it was beneath me the whole time, and I've never I can build 1 million followers as a tile page. I can literally steal every person from the Church of Scientology and literally like create my own religion and like commandeer Christianity with my marketing knowledge. Like the sex work's beneath me. Like
Come on.
Silence on the other side, on the side of the other two
but I
guys.
respect them and they respect me because we are on. It's like, hey, listen, like you get really desperation is an art. You know what I mean? There is an art form to desperation and transmuting desperation into prosperity. But you do reach a certain level where you're just kind of like, okay, I can't go back. But
I mean, now
Yeah.
you could indeed do tremendously good things, right? Because remember
Yes.
the therapy where you say, "Hey, you're traumatizing me," but in a way, I mean that there's a lot of therapy things happening on kind of just like overconsumption of sexual content, right? I mean, it's just
Right,
nothing
like
else.
because
It's
it
an
opens
addiction,
your
right?
brain and pathways that don't necessarily, all content and all media exposes your brain to pathways that don't necessarily, like ideas that don't necessarily belong to you, right? So if it hits you depending on the time and the place and the environment, people based on their entire life history will take it a certain way, right? So like someone who's very smart and scientific like you isn't going to run with OnlyFans and potentially go and do as unhealthy, or run with content that you see and go like leave your wife, get a gambling addiction, sell your kid, and then like die in a ditch, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you're not such, or like die in a heroin den, right? You know, or an opium den. But that is
At the final end, in the last minute, we should discuss
right.
that.
But that is the life pathway for many people. And I think that it's just like when they say drink responsibly, you know, consume content responsibly, make sure you're providing yourself context and educating yourself and not just letting your phone educate you, because it's not the realest thing we have, right? You know, that's not the highest form of reality, even if it is a version of a reality that you need. So I think that that's important. The more technical and the more advanced we get, the more based and the more grounded we have to get. And that's why all this meditation stuff's getting popular. That's why people feel like they have more mental health issues, because they're not like, this is, you know what I mean? They're not touching the ground.
But I mean, would it be exciting for you just to build an online personality about yourself, the real Victoria? Because that is so interesting, because there's so much experience now, right? From back and forth. And I think that could be even more interesting. I mean, for a different audience, obviously, but I think it could be more interesting.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And I think I just see a huge need in the spiritual space. I see like a huge global lack of education, because we did used to culturally, like globally, we I think discriminated against religion more than we do now. I think religion is something that we've become open to, but it's also highly unregulated now. So I want to be, there's a lot of misunderstandings about my culture globally that people just like don't talk about, right? So I want to share kind of like, hey, what is like modern Judaism, and no, like getting fake breast implants so you can survive and make money is not Judaism, but God will forgive me, right? That is Judaism.
This 48,000 dates thing, what is that about?
It's just a marketing tactic. People wanted humorously large numbers, and that became a humorously large number in a world of inflated numbers. It's meaningless.
Well,
It's eye catching. It's as real as Holly Treats as a name.
Okay. Well, all right. So what do these dates entail? Like a few text messages?
They're not real.
They're not real?
It's completely made up.
What are you trying to market if it's all made up?
It's actually the number of paid subscribers that I had on my OnlyFans, and I was hoping that people would understand that that means subscribe to my OnlyFans, and then we can date if you consider this dating. And they didn't get the joke. They thought it meant have sex in real life, and it doesn't, or it means any kind of thing in real life, and it doesn't. So
Okay.
that's also why I'm like, listen, I'm out of here. People are delulu, and you don't understand the game anymore, and I don't want to do it anymore.
Do you still have like passive income from OnlyFans after retiring?
No. I deactivated the account and I make no money there.
Interesting.
I don't touch that money.
I've thought about doing it. Do you think I could do it?
For sure, but I think it works better when you're desperate.
Yeah.
Because you're willing to become anything that the masses need you to become.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think the scientist play won't really work. I think I may get like one or two really paying subscribers.
Listen, like,
to be honest, I think it works.
You have to be a capitalist. You have to be a capitalist.
Yeah.
You have to tell the people what they want and get them addicted, and then be mean to them if they try to leave, and then be like, "Oh, your life sucks without me." Like, that's the real way to do OnlyFans, is just make people feel crazy and then make them stay, and then make them leave their relationship, and then make them need you more, right? Like, it's
What was it
actually, I mean, it makes. I mean, if it sounds horrible, but if you just look at it from the rules of, as you said, capitalism, right? Makes total sense. I mean, it makes total, it is. I mean, we should give credit on,
and then give them a really hard standard to chase and get them addicted to that, which is what the pedophilia stuff is. You know what I mean? Give them a really fleeting resource, and then try to jack up the price of that, and then try to get all the other things that we're selling to rise also. It gets really fucked up, right? So it turns into a really like dark water there's a dark water economy to to this business, and I think that that's kind of what. And I'm not here, like, no one wants me to say that, but it is like it doesn't thrive on imbalance with everything else. It doesn't thrive with health. It doesn't thrive with hygiene.
No, very clear. Yeah, very clearly.
Yeah.
And by the way, neither does gambling.
Andrew, we have to stay here doing our podcast. So
you're doing very important work there. Right. You're doing very important work here. Maybe honestly, go undercover as an OnlyFans person. You know, go undercover and screw up the system from the inside. That's what I say.
Yeah, well, I've just been, I'm curious to like try out my feet or my whatever, just to see what happens. But
hey, you know what though? Men have a lot. Like, I think that's the thing. Like, everyone has to be honest. Like, people have, your sexuality's formed by your like nature and your nurture. So depending on what your nature and your nurture is, there's probably customers for you. And if you have a big following, maybe those people literally like want that kind of like improper therapy from you, right? But then think about who your followers are, because that's who they're going to be. So if it's a bunch of men, then the improper therapy might be unresolved questions they had about like, hey, why did I have this bi moment when I was broke in college? And it's like, a lot of men go bi for money. It's not all of us go bi for money, So it's like, but men have trauma about that because it's like forbidden in their culture, right? So you see so much of that. So it's like those dark psychology things that no one wants to admit that you're going to see on there.
But Victoria, I mean, just like out of curiosity, could we develop like a clean or like healthy version of this? Because to be honest, I think there is really a need for, let's say, interesting intellectual conversations that are, in my side, it's always science-based, right? But I think there are other areas that can be spiritual-based, or even like what I would love to explain is how much spiritual elements can be actually really explained by our brain, right? Not by
I've got
science,
to
but by
actually
our
give a
brain.
shout out to a German company that is in this business. They're going to love me for this. They're called Four Based, like the number four.
Yeah.
And then this is not, they're not paying me to do this. They've earned this recommendation out of merit. What I like is the girls get continuously paid for every user that signs up and all of they're being paid fairly, and I think that they take their jobs more seriously, honestly, as spicy improper therapists as a result, because they have kind of they're tracking how the people who convert to them are continuing in the site, and they care more about their network. And I actually just think that the people at Forebase are very intelligent. It's a little, listen, I'm a little bit more conservative sexually at this point because I'm I'm hypochondriac, and the more health code stuff you learn about in the spicy industry, a lot of people, it's like, I'm not asexual because I don't like to have sex, and I don't have amazing sex, and I don't have kinky sex. It's just more for like the health stuff. It makes me like not as sexual, right, in behavior. Like I could be monogamous and be so happy despite how kinky I am, just because of how the science side, right? You know what I mean? And so, but I like that Four Based is so educated. I appreciate their very liberal perspective, because there's a lot of people that they need proper education from a liberal voice, right? And so they're very open to the LGBTQ plus people, right? And I think that those people need to be guided, and I like how Four Base does it, and I like how Germans do it. Honestly, I just like how Germans do it. So
Is Forebase like OnlyFans?
it's like OnlyFans, but I just think it's a better system, and it's less like slave trafficking and more like they're actually offering a real service and people take it seriously.
All right. Well, tell me about these guys. Like, when you were in the industry, these guys, what were their main objective? Like, was it, you think it was loneliness was their itch that they're trying to scratch?
Yeah, or sometimes people are manically spending their money, right? Like it's like the guy, same as a guy at a casino, right? It's the same profile as a guy at a casino.
I mean, if you think about it, Andrew, just
Or at a
again,
poker game that
going,
has girls, is what I
yeah,
would say. Like poker
yeah.
games that have girls, that is the same environment as OnlyFans.
I mean, biologically, if you just look at what has been formed over millions of years in evolution, right? The point is that on the male side, everything what is new, female side the same thing, is actually attractive, right? It's interesting. Right?
It
So all
is,
of a
yeah.
sudden it's like, it's very simple. It's like, because both sides actually want to, I'm going brutal but evolution, right? Just want to mix their genes with the best genes they see. And then you come to the
Right.
candy shop called called basically, kind of just like, here OnlyFans, where you can basically just do you have everything. So it's like the dream from an evolutionary perspective, if you think about it. So you're not getting in conflict with all the social issues, right? Because you still have a distance, right? So you're somehow still okay.
I
right?
disagree, though. I
Yeah,
disagree.
no, I disagree as
Yeah,
well. I disagree totally. But the
disagree.
point is, you see, just
Yeah.
like it's different than having kind of just like having this life, right? So I think that the desperation there is one, super curiosity. That step one is exciting and curiosity, and then of course it's like, oh, I get so much pleasure from this discussion, right? That I start craving, and then you're done. Yeah, it's like
Right.
literally it's the classical path of any addiction or any dependency. So
For sure. Well, and I
that
think it was different too with, I think the distinction, the thing that people really need to remember is the distinction between pornography and the feeling that you get from getting hooked on OnlyFans that makes you spend a lot of money on an account. And those two things are different, because the static video on its own isn't necessarily the product. It's that dopamine. It's the fact that that account has puppet strings on your dopamine pathways. You know what I
yeah.
mean? And we are aware of it, and we are aware of like, how do we make it better? How do we make it stronger? How do we make you need it more also? And how do we potentially control your environment to reinforce the fact that you need it, right? So I think that that's the other thing. Like all medicine, all types of sciences can become perverted, right? Like people
Yeah.
pervert psychiatry. You know what I mean? To make chemical dependencies and drug addictions, right? Just like how people pervert dating apps to ruin people's lives.
I mean, I think the unique hook, right, is in pornography you're clearly distant, right? There is no personal exchange, whatever it is, via video or text, right?
It's a
So you
movie.
get like
Yeah.
you get like really recognized by that superstar in
Right.
only. Just imagine. So like it's a dopamine and a serotonin booster, and we know if serotonin goes away, you feel like miserable and small. OnlyFans delivers to you the two strongest because oldest neurotransmitters, was dopamine and serotonin. You can hardly run away from this if you miss this and you don't get it elsewhere. So I think
I think that that's
I'm just
the
saying
key.
it's
Yeah.
yeah.
That's the key
Well,
is, do you get those chemicals elsewhere? And when you discover that you get them elsewhere, that's when the aversion starts to happen, because then you feel like whatever that compartment is a threat now to the new thing that you're getting it from. You know what I mean? So that is that's why I have respect, but I'm also I'm I have a very high level view of what OnlyFans is and then what humans are. And then when you look at it like that and you're like, okay, but there's other things that do this for me and then I've discovered them, then you're just kind of like, okay, this is just like another, this is like, I don't like painting anymore. Okay, bye. You know what I mean? Like, and so then it becomes like that. But yeah,
No,
yeah.
but maybe just to defend myself. I was not advertising. I'm just fascinated about concepts that are so well designed neuroscientifically that they almost like have to work. And that's exactly what you just said, Victoria. The abuse, right? The abuse of this is, of course, bad intention. It is what it is. That's why I'm always trying to see how could you really develop it that you're not getting addicted by this, right? Because it's so well designed, and you maybe just stimulate some other things, but most probably I just will always fail in my life in kind of just like making extremely good capitalistic systems good for humans.
well, that's the balance, right? There's, I think, and listen, sometimes the angels need to work with the devils sometimes, right? Like when the world is horrible and there's a lot of destruction or there's a lot of disease or there's a lack of, and we have a huge global initiative that we need money for, sometimes humanity as a whole just becomes more barbaric as a response to the environment, because that is, there's powers greater than us, right? Like I look at the ocean actually a lot. They're having like there's a pod of orcas that specifically hunts dolphins, and it's like they're having like a race war down there, right? You know, there's just like universal imbalance in every species, right? You know what I mean? They're figuring out their hierarchy again down there. So a lot of this stuff is just natural, but I do think that like having people have a connection with spirituality for when they find themselves like, oh my god, now I burnt out that pathway, because that's what happens when you burn out that pathway, where people have, like, for example, for me, when I got deactivated on a TikTok too many times, that just burned out my dopamine pathway. It was just like, this is no longer
You said,
real
yeah,
to
your
me.
serotonin because they took away your pride, your identity. It's
Right. And
crazy,
it's
right?
happened with my Instagram account too so many times. And by the way, when I say so many times, it's like it's too bureaucratic in my mind now. It's not even like a real account. It's like, dude, why do you guys have me as an inventory thing on Instagram? Like I am being trafficked by Instagram with this account, right? You know, so the way your perspective at a high level gets really different, especially now that I work in tech. So I'm just kind of like, this is not a source of brain chemistry for me anymore. But the thing is, I think that during that time when I was in that abusive relationship, the other option was suicide, right?
Yeah.
So it was necessary for me. I have a great respect for the fact that that chapter of me needed that. And I'm so grateful. And at the time I was so grateful. I was getting all the things I needed from it. I felt the validation that I needed. And then it hits a wall where you're just like, no, no more.
Your new pathway is spirituality. Are you religious? Are you going to church like once a week?
I don't go to church. I'm Jewish.
How do they do it? They go to church
We
like
have an
once.
ancient tribe that's very exclusive, that
Okay.
believes in only one God, that doesn't believe in false idolatry, and is based on kind of like science and health code. And
Okay.
they control my life because I'm a woman. And you'd have to ask the men that are in charge of our tribe what our religion is. But we follow tradition and we do as we're told, and we answer to a higher calling than money.
Well, nice. Axel, what's going on when is there any kind of spiritual thing going on when people are praying?
I mean, definitely. So the point is, we tried to ask people when we did our brain imaging experiments to flag when they had a memory that was clearly had a spiritual inspiration, right? Because we were hoping maybe we find the area in the brain that is reflecting the spiritual feeling, right? It is
It's
very interesting that
remembering
it.
near death experiences and
Yeah,
having the
we
life
were actually.
experience of near
Yeah,
death
actually, I think.
experiences that get you really connect. It really makes you understand life. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I was
Yeah.
actually hoping that we could stay in normal memories and not go to the extremes. But I think just to kind of quickly summarize this, what was interesting is that whoever was kind of flagging like a spiritual memory was very rich in the signals in the gratitude area and the contentment area. And so interestingly, the two youngest areas, or the two youngest emotions that have just evolved recently, only in humans, seem to be at least what we experience when we have spiritual moments. So therefore, for me, I don't want to even explain spirituality, but it was just like an interesting correlation, right? That we say, oh, it's an interesting combination that seemed to be pretty unique for humans. And of course, the very interesting thing is that the molecules involved in these two emotions are big surprise, but in a way, it's like the receptors for most of the psychedelics, right? So in a way, the psychedelics have a chance somehow to give us experiences that we can have when we have spiritual moments. So I think, and that for me was actually really exciting, right? That you can literally say, hey, somehow when we cannot explain things anymore with science, spirituality, religion takes over. Huh? I think I call it spirituality takes over because I don't religion. I really don't know, right? But
Religion's
and
more
it
of a
yeah.
history for cultures, is how I look. That's kind of why Jewish people don't consider it a religion, because we're not like looking at a book and being, okay, we all agree on this book. You know what I mean? It's more of like, hey, we have like ancient cultures that if you don't do, you don't get buried in the cemetery. You know what I mean? And that's what our culture is. So if you don't abide by our rules, you don't get the benefits of our entire ancestry. And if you like the benefits of our ancestry, then you act accordingly. So it's kind of like we're locked in there generationally for multiple lifetimes with Judaism. So that's kind of why it's like, hey, they're, like you're in with them. But I do look at religion, there's newer people that aren't connected to stuff like that need, like, like I look at a lot of they're not saying they're pagans, right? Like the pagans from Europe, right? Like they got persecuted so badly and their books got burned so badly that they're like a lot of people are very disconnected from their ancestry, and they still need the goal of spirituality is to go from surviving to thriving, and to set yourself up in future lifetimes with how you survive in this one. And I think that that's actually like an evolutionary progression of cultures where they decide, hey, we don't need to survive as barbarically anymore. And then you just start to develop things like gratitude and stuff like that, because it's like you come from horrible experiences that are like, oh my God, why did that happen? And you have no other explanation to be like, well, you're alive right now and you need to not kill yourself. And that's where you get
Yeah,
that. You
but
know, that's where,
it's almost yeah.
yeah.
No, but
It's
I think
almost
it makes
like
a lot
a,
of sense. It's
yeah.
almost like also if you think about your own story, right? It's almost like you were going the entire ladder step by step, right? And now you finally can just like reached the area where you say, hey, spirituality is what I feel, what actually feels the best, right? So let's kind of just like,
Or that's giving me that's giving me my brain chemistry that I
yeah,
like, right? Yeah, that's
yeah.
kind of
And
how
it
I
gives you the
look at
dopamine
it.
too.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, it gives you,
Yeah.
so gratitude is just dopamine too, a little bit at least. So therefore it makes absolutely right. Yeah.
And it's also in response, right? Like when I was in marketing, I used to go to acting class and singing class, but in America, sadly, as you're learning, everyone was just getting molested and trafficked, and that was very true in every creative thing that was about kids. Everyone just ended up getting molested, sadly. Or you watched people that you were friends with be like, "Oh my God, they're getting molested by kids." It just got, and then you never want to do the talent again because you associate it with trauma. And so it's like, it gets like, you know what I mean? It gets like that. And so it's like that, maybe I used to look at that as like the highest form of like recognition because I saw other people around me getting recognized that way. And it's like, wow, the ones like maybe it's like subconsciously drilled in there where it's like, wow, the ones that got molested got really famous. You know what I mean? So you start being more sexual to kind of because that's like the bar, you know what I mean? Now that's the standard that we're getting to. And then you reach a point where it's like, actually, you know what? Maybe I unlocked this point and I'm seeing how everybody treats me and I don't love I'm like it's not really giving me all that I thought. Not all that glitters is gold, right? You know, once you get the thing that you want, and then you want a different thing, and so maybe for me, the spirituality might be just as addicting as the OnlyFans, right? In fairness to the people that are interested in the OnlyFans right now. So,
Is
I mean,
that
at the end,
possible?
at the end, yeah, so.
Like, can people like kind of be addicted to spirituality the way they're addicted to other things?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think the first thing is when I can only read from the data, right? So it feels like the rudimentary emotions, in particular sexual desire, right, excitement, right, pleasure, there's almost like they get never enough. Huh? And when you then look at and literally the point is because they are deep inside the brain, like in the older structures. The younger structures are at the outside. And of course, because the outside can create much more cortical thickness because there's more volume. Right? This is a hypothesis. We just try to prove that. It feels like growth is unlimited on family love, friendship love, gratitude, and contentment. Because it's literally like you have more room to kind of just create area, not room in terms of volume, but kind of just like connectivity. So, but I mean, ultimately, Victoria, what I think is at the end, when let's say we kind of just fast forward 40 years, if you just look at all what you have experienced, then most probably the whole thing, even like the crazy stuff at OnlyFans before all that, plus the spirituality right now, it's basically you, right? So it's an interesting hunt for dopamine in different formats. Right? So I think most probably you can learn so much from what was driving you earlier to what is driving you now that I think it could be just phenomenal to look at the whole story. Right?
I mean, to be honest with you, the spirituality is the medicine for the poison that I created for myself in sex work. You know what I mean? So I'm creating my own medicine with my content. And it's like I feel poisoned by the effects of the content that I created before. So I'm creating my own medicine, and and it's like maybe other people feel poisoned by the other poison that we made before too. You know what I mean? So it's like, hey, this is kind of a better version of the chemistry for my brain. So maybe it might be a better version of the chemistry for other people's brains.
Yeah, and maybe in a couple of years you may even see some kind of just like real benefits of the time you had, kind of just like in the last 10 years, where you say, hey, without that I would have not even learned what I experience now, right? I mean, I think
and my
for me it's always
data,
like this whole thing that like the point is if we for me it's like this equilibrium between good and bad or unhappy and happy. But in essence, if we learn from the unhappy states, right, then we have made everything correct, right? If we kind of doom everything what was negative, then we just we cannot even learn from kind of, if you look at your path, I think it's a lot of amazing things to learn from what you describe as poison. Maybe in 5 years you will not call it like this. It might have been just like a bad medicine, right, that you just had to take. So
maybe, I don't know. I'm reacting to it like I'm having the same reaction psychosomatically as poison. So it feels poisonous, right? You know?
Okay,
but,
okay. I trust you.
Poisonous.
Yeah, you feel it. I can't feel it. So I trust you. You are right. Yeah.
Yeah. But also sometimes like people can handle alcohol up to a certain point and then they start getting like pancreatitis, right? It's like it's not poison and then it becomes poison. So it's like that's why we don't judge, but you just have to the goal is to just be honest with yourself. And if things aren't working, then you have to do process of elimination and then get back to a place that doesn't feel like you're getting poisoned, right? Whatever the poison is, even if it's not poison for other people. Like 100%. For me, I have a life-threatening allergy. I will die in 20 minutes if I eat peanuts. It's a fact of my body. And there's no like psychosomatic training. You know what I mean? It's just my biology, right? And I have a healthy respect for that. And I look at other things where it's like, wow, I'm having like a visceral reaction to this, right? I'm going into literally shock from this, and all of my body is attacking itself. And so sometimes you just reach that point where it's like you just can't feel you feel like you're stuck. You feel like your body's attacking itself, but it's like a mental spiritual thing. And you're like, and it usually comes when people have consequences from their addictions, right? There's a romance period with all addictions where it's solving the problem effortlessly that you're using it to solve. And then if it goes out of balance, sometimes you lose things for the addiction. And with drugs and alcohol, you see people lose their vanity, they lose their health, they have accidents, they lose property, they lose benefits that they've gotten from life. And it's the same thing with love addiction, right? Or any kind of addiction where it's like, yeah, you lose the things associated with that addiction because you prioritize the addiction. And so I think just keeping it in check, like, yeah, there is always going to be brothels and pleasure houses and strip clubs and OnlyFans. And there's always going to be lonely people. There's always going to be people, whatever. I do hope couples get honest and say, hey, I had this thing happen to me when I was this age and now I like this. And I kind of wish we had another person to deal with us with this so I didn't have to look at you as my wife like this. You know, and I wish people would just have that. And yes, we should pay them because this is a service to our relationship to keep the sanctity of our relationship together so we can, it's an investment actually, I would argue, for couples sometimes. It's like, hey, do you want to keep your marriage together?
Absolutely.
Yeah, like
Absolutely.
the divorce is more expensive than the prostitute, you got sometimes. Yeah, like
Have you struggled with drugs and alcohol, Victoria?
I did from when I was 16 to 21.
Okay, that was before your career on OnlyFans.
Before the career on OnlyFans, I started my career on OnlyFans completely sober. During COVID, I started smoking weed, even though that's not the craziest thing for other people, and some people consider that California sober. In my heart of hearts, I don't feel like that's sober. I feel like that's relying on an outside force to be happy with my chemistry. And even though it's not the most horrible thing ever and I might need it at times, I like the challenge, knowing what I've been through before of, hey, it's a challenge to get off of it though, because it's me conquering myself, you know? So
well said.
And it reaches a point where it's like, hey, this isn't doing for me what it was at the time. And I'm not always grateful when I'm on weed anymore. Like I had an experience before I got sober this most recent time where I smoked weed, and I had this moment where I kind of like broke down and I was like, wow, God, I'm so sorry that I felt like I needed this to get closer to you. And that was my trippy weed experience. But it's kind of like, hey, you know what I mean? You're an open vessel when you consume substances, and sometimes people beckon in bad energy, but sometimes whatever your higher power is will also step in and be like, no, you don't need this anymore to feel closer to me, and you were lost before, so stop, you know? And it's like, okay, I'm gonna listen because I've had a spiritual experience before off of way worse drugs, you know what I mean? So I'm ready to have another spiritual experience again before I lose as much as the first time.
Yeah, I kind of go back and forth. I'll like take a break for a few months and then I'll get back into it, and then you kind of have to have a tolerance break and whatnot, but
I just had so long sober that I have enough of a baseline with myself established of like getting through trauma sober. Like even getting through trauma on the internet, like sometimes I'm like, oh my God, how did I like do this? A lot of people, other entertainers in the business actually ask me and they think I'm crazy because like, how are you doing this sober? It's like, yeah, no. So it's by being a spiritual Jedi. But I also know when I get to the point where I'm smoking weed to dissociate and to make it easier to do things that are harmful, and that it's time to stop if I want to change my life.
Yeah.
I think we shouldn't forget, right? I mean, weed or cannabis is just like an anxiolytic, right? It takes away the fear.
Right.
So just like to be clear, right? So that's why when you get off it, it feels weird, right? You're like,
right. It's
comfortable, right? And
yeah.
I mean, therefore, if you ask me, I think we just portrayed as like a soft drug. I think it's super tricky. Just to put it in perspective, right? The cannabinoids is the feeling for friendship, right? So in a way, you substitute friends with weed. Right? This is on a molecular level what happens, and I think that's why, of course. And then if you feel that you have friends around you, you feel not anxious, right? But it's totally artificial. So you see, right. That's why I think what is happening around the world with kind of just like making it so easy around weed, I think it's just not really reflecting the emotional elements of it. And that's why
And
it feels so good. Let's be
cannabinoids are a
honest, right?
broad topic. As someone who's spent, I actually had some time professionally in the cannabis industry in California and have worked on several farms in Humboldt County and in Mendocino County, where they also grow wine, by the way. Weed and wine grow very well in the same places sometimes. So you learn about both, right? And there, people up there actually, it's just more of a pagan culture because they're agricultural. And so you really see that line in between culture and religion and lifestyle when you're dealing with farmers, right? Because it is kind of like, hey, we need to pray for some rain right now. And it's like, wow, we got some rain. Maybe we should kill a goat for some rain, right? If we really need, right? And so you just see how people get confused, especially on the drugs up there, right? So, and the isolation. Um, but yeah, I think it's like humanity. You reach a point of enlightenment where you're like, wow, what's the next thing? And then you try to get healthier with the next thing and the next thing. But there's a need for this stuff, right? Like if you're it's all the original medicine. Like people were miserable in wandering deserts for 40 years after being enslaved to build tombs for people. You know, like it's like or there was like a crusade on people because they did healing work in their village. You know what I mean? They're like, oh my God, they're witches, let's kill them because they won't, you know what I mean? People have generational trauma that are doing all sorts of things, or even scientists have generational trauma of being too smart and being told they're crazy, right? And it's like if
No
everyone has
trauma, no trauma here. I mean, trauma. You know, if you're in mental disease, trauma is a very big term, right? I mean, we're
it
using it
is,
very
but it's
liberally. Yeah, yeah.
bad
So
memories, then let's say not all the best memories.
true. Yeah.
You were, see, Victoria, you were kicked off Tinder for being too hot. Is that just
Yes.
another marketing thing?
No, I get kicked off every platform for being too hot or not being hot in the narrative that they want. Is kind of how
Like,
that's how that story has evolved. I get kicked
well,
out of everywhere for being too hot. I got kicked off of
But now you
OnlyFans.
should be
I
now
got
you
kicked-
should be on them, right? Without any problems, right? Isn't it?
No,
yeah, like
I'm not the narrative that they want to sell right now. They want to sell an unhealthy narrative that I'm not selling along with them.
so what's the final message you want to leave your audience or our audience?
The final message that I would want to leave for the audience is stay curious. And even if, regardless of what your story, a lot of people are adopted. You know what I mean? And like, I think people have a lot of questions about their ancestral roots and where to go and stuff like that. And I think so much confusion happens from just kind of like lack of understanding. And so I encourage people, like, you can be as wild and as fun and as crazy as you want in your life, right? But you have to know the rules before you break them. And sometimes we're making choices based on things we don't even know. And so know yourself, like, know thyself and get true and be like, what is surviving and what is prospering to me? And then get clear on chasing your goals based on not survival, but prosperity, and being like, hey, maybe survival me had sex for money and prosperous me give sex therapy to couples. You know, like maybe that's the like, and just being honest of like, what is the and what is my or maybe surviving version of me was mixing Adderall with cocaine and telling people it was drugs, and then prosperous version of me is being a doctor, right? Like, and just being very honest about what that progression is, because it is your magic individually, right? Like you are doing your magic whether you know it or not, but there is a refined version of your magic that exists in history, and you have to have the education to learn and to step into your truest potential.
Well said. I appreciate you coming on, Victoria. Everyone, thank you for watching. Check out Victoria's stuff in the description. Uh, Thank you, Axel, a resident neuroscientist. And
Thanks, Victoria.
Thank you,
I will.
Axel. Thank you, Andrew. You guys are amazing.
Hello, I'm Andrew Hales. Welcome to another edition of Inside the Brain of Victoria Duplansky, aka Holly Treats on Instagram. She's an ex OnlyFans girl, and it's been interesting to hear her journey transitioning from that to her new spiritual path, and just hearing about all the anecdotes she has about the spicy industry, as we called it. There's a lot of great stuff in this episode. I think you're going to love it, and thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe, and I love you. And she's turned spiritual and has a lot to say about her journey through the last 10 years. This is a great episode. Hello, I'm Andrew Hales. Welcome to another edition of Inside the Brain. Hello, I'm Andrew Hales. Welcome to another edition of Inside the Brain of Victoria Duplansky, aka Holly.Treats on Instagram. She is an ex OnlyFans girl, and this is a great episode. and and she is an ex OnlyFans girl. She is an ex OnlyFans girl. She did OnlyFans for about and she she's an ex OnlyFans girl, and it's interesting to hear about her journey and the spicy and it's been interesting to. She's an ex OnlyFans. There's a lot of good stuff in this episode. I think you're gonna really like it. Thank you for being here. Please like. There's a lot of great stuff in this episode, and be sure to check her out. There's a lot of great episode. There's a lot of great stuff in this episode. There's a lot of good stuff in this episode, and there's a lot of great stuff. There's a lot of great stuff in this episode. I think you're going to enjoy it. There's a lot of great stuff in this episode. I think you're going to really enjoy it. And there's a lot of great there's a lot of great stuff in this episode. I think you're going to love it. And we talk all about